What's up, everybody? Coach Tony from Bombeck Strength with another episode of Ask Coach Tony. And today's question comes from Michael, who asks, at what point does auto-regulation no longer become useful for powerlifters and just become an excuse to not work as hard? And before I answer this question, make sure that if you like this video and you like my past videos, to like and subscribe so that we can reach more people. And if you want your question answered on a future episode, make sure you leave your question down in the comments. So, RPE. Autoregulation, going by feel, listening to your body, kind of all the same concept. And whether you realize it or not, you've used it and probably continue to use it. Even the coaches and trainers who are kind of anti-autoregulation, anti-RPE based training, they're still using autoregulation, whether they want to admit it. And I think the coaches and lifters who kind of go against RPE based training don't like it, don't think it's effective. Probably don't like it for the exact reason that Michael is talking about, where it very often is thought of as an excuse to just not work as hard. It's like, okay, I do RPE based training, so if I don't feel good, I'm just going to lift lighter, and that's RPE based training, right? It's not quite as simple as that. Auto-regulation comes in a lot of forms. The most common is just choosing the weight on the bar. Okay, I pick a rep range and I pick an RPE target. I want to do sets of 5 at 8 RPE. I want to do triples at 9 RPE. Just pick your reps, pick your RPE, and it's going to get you kind of in a somewhat educated fashion to the weight that you should be lifting for that day. And a lot of lifters do primarily use it to do less weight they initially planned on that given day. I think most lifters, most power lifters are pretty competitive, pretty driven, pretty motivated. They want to lift more. They're always chasing that next PR. So the mindset going in is always like, yeah, I want to do XYZ weight. I want to try to add weight to the bar from last time. I want to try to beat a rep max or, a record for a certain lift. And very often those intentions are great, but you might not be able to hit your target weight for the day. And that's where RPE based training is very good, right? If I say I want to do a triple at 405 on the squat, that was my goal, but I get up to 365 as my last warm-up, it feels heavy as hell. Okay, going to 405 is probably not the best option for the day. What would be more productive, to chase 405 anyways, or to do less weight for that triple and hit the target RPE? And I think the answer is pretty obvious. So RPE-based training also allows you to push harder on the days that you're feeling really good, right? So if I take that same target, 405, and I do my last warm-up at 365, and it absolutely flies, way easier, way lighter than it normally would be. It's like, okay, let me take 405 for a set of 1, see if it feels like it's going to be the right RPE for that triple. And if the single that you do before the top set feels really good, like, go ahead, add more weight to the bar than you plan to, so it does work both ways. I think where RPE becomes less productive is if you are always looking for a way out, always looking for a reason to not go after the weights that you should be going after. But I think that's a little bit less of like, it could go one of two ways. It could either be like a mentality problem where it's like, okay, this is the weight that you should be doing for your target rep range and your target RPE, but it kind of freaks you out a little bit. You're intimidated by it. So maybe you're using RPE as a reason to never really kind of go slay that dragon and go after that big weight. I know of some lifters like that. I've certainly experienced that in the past as a lifter, where you kind of put a certain weight up on a pedestal and you're afraid to just go for it in training. I think where sometimes the bigger issue lies is if you are constantly having to go lighter than intended and use auto-regulation, and you're constantly undershooting, constantly having to do less weight than what you probably should, then I don't think it's an auto-regulation issue. I think you have to look outside the gym and look at the other factors that are contributing to why you're constantly having to reduce weight on the bar from what you had planned. Maybe your aspirations and maybe your lack of self-awareness is what's getting you in trouble. But I find, let's use a top set multiple weeks in a row at the same assignment as an example, something very common. Just let's talk about triples at 7 RPE. All right, so triples, not all that heavy, but not super light either. And, if you go in 1 week and let's say you do 225, and the next week you go in and you do 230, so 5 pounds more, it's the same RPE, progress in the right direction. Third week, having a bad week, so you back it down. Instead of going to 235, maybe you go back down to 220, 225. If like week 4, week 5, like you're not able to add weight to the bar and you're constantly using auto-regulation to reduce the weight down and you're not making that linear progress, maybe it's what's going on outside of the gym, right? Progress should be able to happen fairly linearly, week over week for at least, several weeks in a row, unless you're completely recovery compromised. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is if you're not able to add weight to the bar progressively using auto-regulation, being smart about it, and you're constantly having to auto-regulate down sleep, nutrition, stress levels, injury status, like you got to look at other stuff, right? I really like the phrase that Greg Panora says, where it's like lifting weights can't make you weaker, right? Lifting weights makes you stronger, but if you're not kind of seeing those progressive gains over the week over week in a given exercise, you're either pushing too hard or under recovering or a combination of both, right? So I don't think auto-regulation is to blame when you are constantly having to use it necessarily. That's not the fault of the system. That's where the system is helpful, right? Like it should help you make better choices, more educated choices in training over and over and over. But if you're constantly having to make those to like be smart and be conservative because you're just not feeling it, like if you're never feeling it, that's not RPE's fault. That is a recovery issue that should be addressed outside the gym. So yeah, RPE certainly kind of misused by lifters who don't want to train that hard, but that doesn't mean the system or that, auto-regulation as a concept doesn't work, right? We all use auto-regulation all the time, whether you realize it or not. So ask yourself, am I good at using RPE? Have I practiced it enough to know myself well enough? Am I staying true to, listening to my body? Am I pushing through when I shouldn't? Or am I pulling back when I really should kind of, buckle up and do something heavier? Or am I just not recovering to the point where I'm having to use and abuse RPE-based training? So I think auto-regulation is still the foundation of any intelligent training program. Yes, it takes a little bit to learn how to do it, to use it effectively. It's a skill worth building. Just like you build your technique in the squat, bench, and deadlift, you have to build your ability to make good training decisions. All right, so if you want your question answered on a future edition of Ask Coach Tony, make sure you ask it in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe.